They thought she was just another black woman with a phone, but that call reached the Pentagon and ended their careers. A single phone call to the Pentagon was all it took to end entire careers. But none of that was on General Naomi Ellsworth's mind when she turned onto a side road in Louisiana. She was traveling alone. No escort, no uniform, no visible power beyond her calm presence. For her, it was just another high-level assignment. For everyone else, just another black woman driving through the South. The route took her through peaceful landscapes, empty fields, ancient trees, and rusted gas stations frozen in time. She had driven this stretch many times before. She knew that between Lake Charles and Shreveport, signal was weak, so she stayed alert for any opportunity to pull over and make a secure call. The information she needed to deliver couldn't wait. It was classified, instructions for overseas operations, sensitive coordinates, and even though she wore jeans, sneakers, and an unzipped olive green jacket, Naomi carried in her pocket the identity of one of the most decorated officers in the United States Army. When she saw Killy's fuel unfold in the distance, she figured it would do. She didn't need comfort, just a signal bar and a moment of quiet. She parked far from the main entrance, right at the edge of the building, where a jagged patch of shade stretched across the hood of her rental car. From the gas station door, a few locals looked at her with curiosity. Men in trucker caps and sleeveless shirts, leaning against dusty pickups, sipping sodas and commenting on the heat. No one recognized her. And that was fine. Invisibility was part of her protection, until it wasn't. Naomi pulled out her secure phone, one only a handful of people in the country were authorized to carry. She stepped away from the car and held it to her ear, scanning her surroundings with trained eyes. General Ellsworth, verifying identity. Beginning report, she said calmly, voice low. The Pentagon voice answered immediately. The conversation began with a download of sensitive data. Naomi stayed focused, barely moving her lips as she absorbed every word. But inside the store, something very different was being set in motion. Behind the counter, Paula Iswani, the store manager, had been watching Naomi for a minute now. Mid-50s, tight blonde bun, and a permanent scowl of suspicion. She didn't need to hear the conversation or see the phone clearly. Her prejudice filled in the blanks. With quick, discreet movements, Paula picked up the old landline behind the counter. Mosbot Police Department, she whispered. We've got a woman acting strange outside. Might be on drugs or spying or something. Looks real suspicious, better come take a look. Across town, 2 patrol officers heard the call with a mix of boredom and eagerness. Nothing big ever happened in Mosbot, until someone different caught attention. Let's see what we've got, one said, putting on his sunglasses and flipping the siren. Naomi had no idea the countdown had begun, that each second with the phone in her hand was bringing her closer, not to mission success, but to a confrontation with the worst still lurking in America's quiet corners. Just as she was about to receive her next set of coordinates, red and blue lights flashed across the gas station's windows. Naomi squinted. She didn't know what was happening yet. Her training told her to stay calm. Her instincts said something was very wrong. The 2 officers jumped out of the car before it even stopped. One, broad-shouldered with a military buzz cut, unclipped his holster without hesitation. The other followed suit. Both looked at Naomi like they already knew who she was, even though they knew nothing at all. Naomi slowly lowered her phone and placed it on the hood of her car in full view. She raised both hands, palms open. She didn't shout. She didn't move suddenly. She simply said, "Good afternoon, officers. How can I help you?" But the words didn't matter. They had judged her before she ever spoke. Naomi sat on the hot concrete, wrists still burning from the cuffs. Her military-trained composure held, but inside a storm raged. The officers hadn't just disrespected her rank, they had erased it. In that cracked parking lot, her medals meant nothing. Her service, her sacrifice, none of it had protected her from being seen as a threat for simply existing. Inside the black SUV speeding toward Barksdale Air Force Base, silence filled the cabin. Lieutenant Colonel Mosley, seated beside her, didn't offer empty words. He knew better. Naomi's gaze stayed fixed on the road ahead. but her mind was replaying everything. The mocking tone, the cold metal, the look in their eyes when they decided she didn't belong. Her new phone buzzed. Dozens of unread messages, emails from the Pentagon, notifications from White House liaisons, veteran organizations, journalists. But one stood out. A scanned letter from a black cadet at West Point. "General, if you hadn't stood your ground, I would have given up." The words hit her like a punch to the chest. When Naomi entered the IR base, a war room had already been set up. Pentagon staff, legal advisors, and military strategists filled the space. Screens glowed with satellite images, encrypted files, and incident footage. But this wasn't a combat operation. It was something far more fragile. A battle for truth, for accountability, for visibility. The first action was swift. Barksdale Command suspended both officers. A federal inquiry was launched. Naomi signed the official request for investigation with a steady hand, though her soul felt raw. This wasn't about punishing two men. It was about dismantling the casual cruelty embedded in systems meant to protect. The next morning, Naomi joined a secure video call with the Secretary of Defense. He tried to maintain protocol, but even he looked shaken. "General Ellsworth, what happened was inexcusable. We'd like you to lead the National Task Force on Racial Conduct and Policing Standards." Naomi paused. "Only if I pick the team, and only if I can tell the truth." Back in Mazbat, the town began to unravel. Protests sparked outside the station. Small at first, then loud, then unstoppable. Posters reading "She is a General" flooded the streets. Local officials scrambled. Some residents defended the officers. Others brought flowers to the parking lot where Naomi was arrested. The silence had finally broken, but not without backlash. Naomi received threats, anonymous emails, voicemails, drones flying too close to her temporary quarters. The cost of standing up was real, yet fear never ruled her. She'd led soldiers under fire. She wasn't about to back down because someone was afraid of her voice. She compiled a 100-page report on racial profiling in rural jurisdictions, exposing how small-town departments often escaped federal audits and operated by unwritten codes. Her findings shocked even the most seasoned policymakers. The report reached Congress, attached to a proposed bill informally called the Ellsworth Amendment. Meanwhile, Officers Cooper and Delane were removed from duty. Their names leaked within hours. Journalists dug up past complaints, use of force, discriminatory stops, all buried until now. They were summoned to testify before a federal oversight board. And in a moment they didn't expect, Naomi entered the room, not with fury but with calm disappointment that cut deeper than any punishment. Paula Eswini tried to stay out of sight. But investigators uncovered that she had made similar racially charged calls in the past. Surveillance footage showed her smirking as Naomi was handcuffed. She claimed it was a misunderstanding. The footage told a different story. Naomi refused exclusive interviews. Instead, she recorded a simple video in her office. No makeup, no uniform, just her. "What happened to me isn't rare. What's rare is people seeing it, believing it. Now they have, and no one can pretend they didn't." The video went viral, 60 million views in 48 hours. The momentum built. Universities taught her case in ethics courses. Military academies revised training modules. Lawmakers who once avoided the topic now called for reform. And somewhere, a 9-year-old girl sent Naomi a drawing of a black woman in uniform wearing a superhero cape. Below it, in shaky handwriting, "You're the general for all of us." Pressure mounted on local officials. The mayor of Mazbat, who had remained silent for days, was forced to step in front of cameras. Sweating beneath the harsh lights, he offered a lukewarm statement about respecting due process and letting investigations run their course. But the crowd behind the press line wasn't satisfied with soft words. They wanted justice, and they wanted it loud. Inside Naomi's inner circle, tensions rose. Her advisors debated strategy, whether to maintain military decorum or go fully public with everything. But Naomi reminded them, this wasn't about her image. It was about truth. If we act like this is normal, we let it keep happening. I didn't survive deployments just to be quiet now. Veteran communities, once cautious about involving themselves in public controversies, began to speak up. Medal recipients, retired generals, and even military families voiced their support for Naomi. One retired colonel wrote, "If she can be arrested in broad daylight with credentials in hand, then none of us are truly safe from bias." Journalists descended on Mazbot like a tidal wave. National anchors, documentary crews, and independent investigators scoured every inch of the town. Former classmates of the officers came forward. Old footage surfaced. What began as a single incident now stood as evidence of a culture long ignored and finally exposed. Naomi remained composed, but she knew what this moment meant. This wasn't just about a wrongful arrest. It was a mirror held up to America's face. And the image was uncomfortable. The press conference was scheduled for noon on a blazing Saturday, just outside the gates of Barksdale Air Force Base. News vans lined the streets like war machines. Cameras stood shoulder to shoulder, their lenses aimed at a small podium flanked by armed guards. The air vibrated with that rare kind of silence that comes before a storm, tense, expectant, electric. Naomi stood behind the curtain in full dress uniform for the first time since the incident. Her medals caught the sun like shards of truth. Every crease in her jacket, every polished button, every thread was a reminder. She had earned this. Not by being perfect, by serving, by surviving, by refusing to shrink. She had declined pre-approved talking points. No scripted apology, no diplomatic softening. What she had to say came from a place no one else could write for her. The eyes in the crowd weren't just press. They were teachers, mothers, veterans, young cadets and strangers who'd never seen themselves reflected in someone at that podium. Until now. Naomi stepped forward. The clicks of camera shutters started immediately, but her voice, when it came, sliced through it all like a blade. "My name is General Naomi Ellsworth," she began. "I've spent 29 years serving this country. I've commanded troops, advised presidents, and upheld the very Constitution that defines who we are." She paused. The wind stirred slightly. But yesterday, in Mazbot, Louisiana, none of that mattered. The words hung in the air like thunderclouds. She didn't rush. She let them settle, heavy and undeniable. I was not seen as a leader, not as a soldier, not as a citizen. I was seen as a problem. Reporters scrambled to take notes. Some lowered their phones, stunned into simply listening. Naomi continued, "This isn't just about me. This is about every person who's ever been dismissed because of the way they look. Every person questioned before they're believed, hurt before they're helped." She looked directly into the sea of cameras. "I'm not here for an apology. I'm not here for pity. I'm here because silence is not an option. Accountability matters. Respect matters. Human dignity is not a request. It's a right." Behind the press rows, a crowd had gathered. Local, families, students, veterans, protesters, supporters. They held signs that said things like, "Honor has no color. She protected us. Now we protect her," and simply, "Listen." Naomi saw them. She nodded once, her only sign of emotion. "The officers who arrested me didn't fail because they didn't recognize my face," Naomi said. "They failed because they didn't recognize my humanity. And the system they serve failed them too, by never teaching them how to see it." The truth in her words was heavy, unshakable. "You don't need to be a general to deserve respect," she added. "You just need to be a human being." When she finished, she didn't linger. No dramatic exit, no waving. She simply stepped away from the microphone and walked off with the same calm stride she had used on foreign soil, on rescue missions, and in briefing rooms where decisions cost lives. The applause started small. Then it grew. It wasn't frenzied. It was grounded, earnest, like something sacred had just happened. Naomi didn't look back. She didn't need to. Her message had landed where it needed to be, in people's conscience. The video of her speech spread within hours. It was broadcast, clipped, translated, analyzed, but more importantly, it was felt. In living rooms, in classrooms, in locker rooms and courtrooms, people didn't just hear her words, they saw themselves in her story. That week, the Department of Justice announced a sweeping civil rights probe into rural policing practices. A federal task force was greenlit. Naomi's recommendations were placed at the top of the agenda. But for her, it was never about the headlines. It was about the people still invisible behind them. Officer Cooper and Delane faced disciplinary hearings. Their defense fell flat. Too many witnesses, too much footage, too many prior complaints ignored. Both were stripped of their badges. Their careers ended, not because Naomi asked for vengeance, but because the truth demanded it. Paula Iswani's gas station lost its license. Investigators confirmed years of racially motivated reports. Her image became the face of small-town discrimination gone unchecked. She issued a statement. Half excuse, half regret. But the world had already moved on from excuses. Naomi returned to work. Not behind a desk, but in the field, traveling to police departments, military academies, even schools. She spoke with a presence that needed no introduction. Not as a victim, not even just as a hero, but as proof that one voice, steady, unflinching, can tilt the axis of an entire nation. She received letters every day. From women, from soldiers, from kids who had never believed they'd amount to anything until they saw her. Some simply wrote, "Thank you for not giving up." She kept every single one. One night, alone in her quarters, Naomi stared at the reflection in her window, not at her uniform or her rank, but at the woman beneath. The woman who had once been silenced in a gas station parking lot and turned that silence into a siren for the world to hear. She smiled, not because the battle was over, but because it had finally begun in the open. If they had underestimated her once, they would never again. And if they dared to try, she'd be ready. So would millions more.